We live in a time where words like trauma, nervous system, and PTSD are everywhere. Psychology explains what pain does to the brain. Faith tells people to have hope. But most people treat these as two separate worlds, one scientific, one spiritual, one practical, one symbolic. What if that division was never real? What if the Bible was describing trauma mechanisms long before psychology created the vocabulary? What if Scripture was not written as comfort first? What if it was written as a system for stabilizing the human nervous system? Because when you read the behavioral patterns described in Scripture through the lens of modern neuroscience, something unexpected happens. You do not find contradiction, you find alignment. You find descriptions of stress responses, you find regulation patterns, you find recovery sequences. You find what looks less like religion and more like a behavioral manual. Which raises a different question. If these mechanisms were always there, why were we never taught how to use them? Most people believe trauma is something you remember, but trauma is actually something your body repeats. Your reactions today often come from patterns installed during earlier stress. This is why small problems can create large reactions. This is why calm situations can still feel unsafe. Your nervous system is not asking what is true, it is asking what feels familiar. The brain prefers familiar patterns even when they are harmful. This is not weakness, this is conditioning. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart because everything flows from it." The word heart in Scripture refers to the control center of thought and behavior. This means the Bible was already identifying the control system psychology now studies. If the control center is shaped by repeated input, then unfiltered input creates automatic reactions. Most people try to fix this by changing circumstances, but Scripture points somewhere else. It points to changing what repeatedly enters the system, because whatever enters repeatedly eventually becomes automatic, and whatever becomes automatic eventually feels like identity. Trauma persists because the brain automates whatever it must repeat to survive. This is not emotional weakness, this is efficiency. The brain reduces effort by turning repeated responses into default reactions. This is why fear can become automatic. This is why hyper-alert thinking can become normal. This is why shutdown can become your baseline without permission. Romans 12:2 describes this as pattern formation long before neuroscience used the word conditioning. Patterns form through exposure. Patterns stabilize through repetition. Patterns become identity through automation. This reveals the real mechanism most people miss. Your brain does not change through insight. Your brain changes through replacement. Old patterns weaken only when new patterns fire more often. This is why trying to stop negative thoughts rarely works. Suppression keeps the loop active because attention still feeds it. The brain cannot run empty space. It replaces input or it returns to the old loop. Scripture operates as replacement input, not inspiration, not comfort, replacement. This is why repetition appears constantly in biblical instruction, because repetition is the installation process. What you repeat daily eventually becomes what feels natural. What feels natural eventually becomes what feels true, even when it is not. Joshua 1:8 gives one of the clearest behavioral instructions in Scripture. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night. Then you will make your way stable and effective. This is not religious language first. This is repetition structure. Speak it, repeat it, maintain exposure. The instruction targets input frequency, not emotional belief. The order matters. Input first, stability second. This matches how neural reinforcement works. Whatever fires repeatedly wires more easily. Philippians 4:8 uses the same structure. Whatever is true, whatever is stable, whatever is worthy of focus, think about these things. This is not positive thinking. This is cognitive filtering. Scripture is describing selective attention control. Trauma installs negative scanning patterns. Scripture installs directed scanning patterns. The brain will always scan for something. It cannot stop scanning because prediction is its survival function. Scripture simply redirects what it scans for. This turns Scripture into a daily nervous system training tool, not theory,
not philosophy, daily input training. What you repeatedly allow into attention slowly becomes what your brain expects to find. Neuroscience explains this through neuroplasticity. The brain strengthens whatever pathways are used most often. Pathways not used begin to weaken through disuse. This is called competitive wiring. Trauma pathways stay strong because they fire frequently, not because they are permanent. This means change is less about removal and more about competition. New patterns must outnumber old patterns. This is why occasional motivation fails. Frequency beats intensity. 5 minutes daily changes pathways more than one emotional breakthrough. Consistency signals safety to the brain more than intensity ever can. This is why repetition appears both in scripture and behavioral science. The brain updates predictions based on repeated evidence. When new input repeats daily, the brain slowly lowers threat sensitivity. This is how safety becomes believable again, not through logic, through exposure. This is why meditation in scripture means repeated focus, not empty thinking. It is controlled exposure to stabilizing input. Over time, this reduces automatic threat activation and increases response control. The brain does not ask if something is true first. It asks how often it appears. This is where scripture becomes practical training instead of information. Choose one stabilizing verse that directly opposes your most common stress pattern. Not 10 verses, 1. Write it where you can see it without effort. Read it out loud for 5 minutes each morning. Read it again for 5 minutes before sleep. Do this even if it feels mechanical, especially if it feels mechanical. Mechanical repetition is how automatic patterns are built. The brain changes through exposure, not emotion. Speak the same words daily for at least 21 days to establish familiarity. Continue for 30 days to reduce resistance. Continue for 66 days to begin automatic recall under stress. This is the installation window most behavior change research confirms. You are not trying to feel different. You are installing a different default response. When stress appears, your brain will reach for what it has practiced most. This turns scripture into practiced recall instead of emergency information. You are training response speed, not just understanding. Repetition works because the brain trusts what it sees often, more than it hears once. Survival depends on prediction. Prediction depends on patterns. When the same stabilizing input appears daily, the brain begins updating its threat model. This reduces false alarms over time. This is why people can know truth intellectually, but still react from fear automatically. Knowledge without repetition does not reach the automatic layer. Repetition does. The automatic brain learns through frequency, not explanation. This is why Deuteronomy 6 instructs repetition during daily routines. Talk about it when you sit, repeat it when you walk, recall it when you lie down, repeat it when you wake. This is behavioral saturation. The goal is not memorization. The goal is environmental exposure. When stabilizing input surrounds daily life, the brain stops treating safety as rare. It begins treating safety as normal. This is how internal reactions begin to slow down without forcing them. What repeats becomes familiar. What becomes familiar becomes safe. Start with one verse and one 5-minute window today. Read it slowly out loud. Repeat it 10 times. Do the same tonight. Continue tomorrow. Track nothing except consistency. Expect nothing during the first week except familiarity. By week 3, expect faster emotional recovery after stress. By day 30, expect reduced automatic negative spirals. By day 66, expect the verse to appear automatically under pressure. This is not belief training. This is response training. You are installing a replacement pattern through controlled repetition. If you miss a day, continue the next day without restarting. The brain measures frequency, not perfection. Missed days do not erase installed patterns. Consistency rebuilds momentum quickly. Do this daily, and you will not just understand stability, you will train it. Start before motivation appears. Repetition creates motivation after patterns begin changing.